Welcome to Sitcom Showdown, a podcast that reviews classic sitcom episodes and inducts them into our very own Hall of Fame. As usual, one of us has chosen a sitcom episode and the other guy has no idea what it's going to be. Will they already know it? Will they love it? Can they be convinced that it's worthy? Let's find out on Sitcom Showdown.
Hello everyone, it's Steve here. I hope you're doing well. I'm here with Jeff. Hello.
Hey.
And it's my turn to pick.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been looking forward to this one. This is one that I've been practically begging you to watch.
Really?
But you haven't got around to it, so today I'm going to force you to watch it.
I mustn't have been paying attention because nothing's coming to mind.
Oh, I was going to ask you if you could guess what it was, but
No.
obviously not. No.
As soon as you tell me, I'll go, oh, yeah.
It's The Good Place.
Oh, The Good Place. All right, here we go.
Yes, we're watching an episode called Everything is Fine, which
Right.
is episode 1.
Sounds promising. I don't know if we should believe it.
Everything is fine, everything is fine.
Oh, okay.
Nothing to-
That's a portent of doom if ever I've heard one. Okay.
Of course it's not. I just want to say before we get into it that this, unlike Blackadder, which we were talking about last time, where we talked about how the reset button is hit at the end of every episode,
Yeah.
and it's almost as if all the stuff Blackadder was working on with the Queen never happened.
Yeah.
This is a perfect example of a sitcom where that doesn't happen.
Right, okay.
And the story, there's a definite plot line that we're following
Yep.
through, and because of that, there's spoilers.
Yeah, okay.
Potentially big spoilers, so I've
Ah.
prepared all this, and I'll endeavour not to spoil anyone beyond episode 1, which we're going to be talking about.
Aha.
Because I want everyone to enjoy this.
Yes.
It's very, they do a fine job of surprising you, and twists and turns and things like that, which I don't want to spoil, so...
Over the course of the whole...
Yeah, over the course of the whole thing.
This mirrors a lot of what I was saying about My Name is Earl, in that they don't hit the reset button because it's a journey of personal growth, so this seems like a similar thing.
Yes, I think we'll be talking about that a bit later.
Okay.
A bit later on. And in fact, I think we might break with tradition and...
Not watch it.
not watch it? Oh, that'd be interesting.
No,
Bit difficult to discuss it. But,
Fair enough.
No, I thought we might watch it and then record our description.
Okay, which means that we've got to leap right into it now, and there'll be a clip.
And something else, which is a bit unusual, is we're going to be trying to watch it on Netflix at your place. So,
Okay, well, we better run off and do this now, and we'll come back in a few hours. Good. Well, on the basis of your recommendation, let's zip off and watch The Good Place.
okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to your first day in the afterlife. You were all, simply put, good people. But how do we know that you were good? How are we sure? During your time on Earth, every one of your actions had a positive or a negative value, depending on how much good or bad that action put into the universe. Every sandwich you ate, every time you bought a magazine, every single thing you did had an effect that rippled out over time and ultimately created some amount of good or bad. You know how some people pull into the breakdown lane when there's traffic and they think to themselves, who cares? No one's watching. We were watching. Surprise. Anyway, when your time on Earth has ended, we calculate the total value of your life using our perfectly accurate measuring system. Only the people with the very highest scores, the true cream of the crop, get to come here to the good place. What happens to everyone else, you ask? Don't worry about it.
Chidi, you'll stand by my side no matter what, right?
Of course I will.
Promise me. Say, I promise I will never betray you for any reason.
Elanor, I swear that I will never say or do anything to cause you any harm.
Good. Because those aren't my memories. I wasn't a lawyer. I never went to the Ukraine. I hate clowns. There's been a big mistake. I'm not supposed to be here.
Wait, what?
And we're back. We got it sorted out. And how did you survive that, Jeff?
That was good.
Good. Oh, I think there's going to be plenty to discuss. So we'll jump into it with a overall description of the sitcom. So in The Good Place, Elanor Shellstrop, who is the main character, dies and finds herself in the afterlife. Specifically, she is in a brand new neighbourhood of the Good Place, which has been designed by an architect named Michael, who greets her upon arrival. We soon learn that Elanor was sent there by mistake, and she is obliged to hide her secret and her morally imperfect behaviour from Michael, her co-residents Jianyu, Tahani, her soulmate Chidi, and the neighbourhood's AI interface, which is Janet. That's the gist of it. It was on is on the NBC network in the US. They finished airing 2 seasons to date, and there's a third one on the way. So it's 2006 to ...
Okay, 2016.
2006, yeah.
So then...
2016.
Yeah.
Onwards.
Okay.
Famous stars and other background. Kristen Bell stars as Elanor, a deceased saleswoman from Arizona. And Kristen was the lead in Veronica Mars. Have you heard of that show?
Ah, yes. Famous show.
Yep.
Yes, I've watched a few episodes of it. I liked Veronica Mars, those couple of episodes that I watched. And from memory, it was such a popular show. Was that the one where, long after it was cancelled, everyone raised a crap ton of money on Kickstarter and then... Oh, okay,
I believe so.
So it had a tremendous following.
Yep. She's also had a turn in Heroes.
Mm.
I don't know if that's a feather in your cap or not. And she also did one of the voices for the movie Frozen, which I don't know if you know much about that, but that's a massive Disney movie for kids. Ted Danson, who you spotted straight off the bat, stars as Michael, and he's the architect of the Good Place. You tell me, what was his big role?
Crikey. Cheers.
Yeah, he was Sam in Cheers.
Yeah, and then Becca. Becca went on for longer than I thought it would.
Yep.
Maybe 5 seasons or something.
Okay, that's pretty decent. He was in CSI, movies, and other sitcoms.
Yeah, he's had a big, long career.
Yep, he's been around for a while.
Mm.
There's William Jackson Harper as Chidi. He's a deceased professor of moral philosophy who was born in Nigeria and raised in Senegal, and he's Eleanor's soulmate.
Right.
Jamila Jamil as Tahani, a deceased wealthy philanthropist who travelled extensively around the world. Manny Jacinto plays Jianu, a silent Buddhist monk from Taiwan, and Tahani's soulmate.
I can see he's going to be a real laugh as the series goes on.
Well, I did want to
lots of double takes and facial expressions.
I did want to mention that although both of those characters don't have a lot in this particular episode, because we're dealing heavily with the introduction to the concept of the Good Place and Elanor and Chidi, they do come into their own in later episodes. D'Arcy Carden plays Janet. She's like the AI interface that helps people out. And also want to mention that this was created by Michael Schur, who's also known for his work on The Office US, that is, and Parks and Recreation, which he co-created with Greg Daniels. He also co-created the Fox comedy series Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which I've started watching that now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ah.
Yeah, was that derisory?
That was a derisory groan from me, of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, because it's all, I think a lot of shows like that are just writers trying to prove how hip they are and how smart they are, and basically, it's just let's do our third-rate Joss Whedon dialogue and then throw in some characters who can speak this dialogue. That's my take on the whole thing.
Oh, okay. Michael Schur actually had a small role on The Office. He played Mose Shroot.
Hey!
He was a beetroot farmer or something.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. It was pretty classic. Okay, so my personal background to watching this, well, I think this was one of the first shows I sought out when we got Netflix last year. Yeah, pretty much went straight through it. And then we watched the second series when that came out. Enjoyed it a lot.
But how? How did you get to that point?
How did I get to
this point? Is what everyone's wondering. Well, like if you sort it out, that hints at you knowing about it, therefore you must have heard about it.
Well, I'd heard about the concept of it and what it was about. I thought, wow, that sounds pretty cool.
Aha.
And then I noticed that they had it on Netflix. So should we go to a synopsis?
Yep.
All right. Well, we open with Elanor sitting on a couch in what appears to be a waiting room. And on the wall is a sign, some kind of a digital sign, which says, "Welcome, everything is fine." Obviously, they don't want people to be panicked.
Oh, okay, yes, right.
By the situation. Yeah. So she's smiling contentedly, and Michael pops his head out of the office next door and asks her to come in. She sits down and he announces that she's dead and in the next phase of her existence in the universe. She very calmly insists on an explanation of how she died and then asks who got it right about the afterlife. And then finally she asks the question, well, if I'm in the afterlife, is this heaven or is it hell? Michael says, well, it's not quite like that. There's a good place and there's a bad place. And Elanor, the good news is you're in the good place. They leave the office, they go for a walk to the town square, and he's explaining stuff about the good place, and he's saying how it's divided into these specially designed neighbourhoods.
Of 322 people?
322 people. I don't know how they settled on that number.
Mm-hmm.
And this happens to be Michael's first solo project. He's the architect of this neighbourhood. Probably mentioned that already. So they're walking through the neighbourhood. They go to the town square where 321 other people who have recently arrived are seated, and there they watch this video where Michael explains how people's actions during their life on Earth are weighed. And upon death, only the people with the best scores go to the good place. It's the cream of the crop. And then the icing on the cake is that each person's soulmate is also a resident of the neighbourhood.
Oh.
Yeah, fancy that.
Well, it's a bit tricky if you're already married and you're having a brilliant time and all that sort of stuff, and then next thing you know, you're dead, and then you're forced into this relationship.
Don't let it worry you. You're in the good place.
Oh.
We find out that after they've watched that video, we find out that Florence Nightingale, Mozart, Picasso, Elvis, almost every US president, they're in the bad place.
Yeah.
But Elanor, she got in. She was a lawyer who got innocent people off death row. She was special. Michael takes her to her house, shows her around, and we see a video of some of her work, which happened to be a human rights mission to the Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
Then we meet Chidi. He comes in, and Chidi is Eleanor's soulmate. And they're both excited to meet each other, and he's excited because they'll soon be able to spend the rest of eternity learning about the fundamental truths of the universe as soulmates. Well, that sounds nice, doesn't it?
It's up his alley.
It's totally up his alley. Elanor, in response, gets him to take a vow of secrecy. She asks him to vow that he will never do anything to harm her, which he does. And then she promptly announces that those memories on the screen aren't hers. She hates clowns. This house has been decorated with clown stuff. And she's not supposed to be here. They got her name right, but everything else it's wrong that she's there. And somebody majorly forked up because this is the good place. You can't swear.
Mm.
So that's the first major twist. Chidi asks her, well, what did you do if you didn't do this stuff that you were supposed to have? And she says she was in sales, and we see a flashback to her life where she's doing some kind of induction at a new job, and it turns out that she's going to be selling the elderly fake medicine. So, yes.
And she was real good at it too.
She was a star at it.
And she didn't care.
Nope. Chidi says, well, maybe this is a test. Maybe you have to go to Michael and tell him what's happened in order to pass the test. Go and tell him about this mistake. She says, no, I can't risk going to the bad place, which is
fair,
understandable. So they decide the thing to do is to get more information. So they go out, and Chidi calls up Janet, who's the aforementioned omniscient AI, the interface. And that just confirms that the bad place is absolutely terrible and should be avoided at all costs.
Oh, yeah.
She can't answer any specific question about the bad place, but she plays an audio clip, and all you can hear is people screaming and getting tortured, and it sounds horrible. Elanor proposes laying low in the hope that no one's going to notice her situation. Chidi says, I feel a bit uncomfortable with this plan. And she says, well, what was your job? And he says, well, I was a professor of ethics and moral philosophy. Might be why he felt uncomfortable with her plan.
Well, I think so.
And he's saying, I think I just have to tell Michael. But just then Michael comes along, and he introduces Tahani and Gianu, who are Eleanor's neighbours. And Elanor and Chidi are invited to a party at their mansion tonight, along with everyone else in the neighbourhood. At the party, Elanor gets pretty hammered. She eats a bucket load of shrimp. She mocks the hostess, not to her face, I should add.
Yeah, deservedly so, I thought.
Sorry?
Deservedly so.
Deservedly so? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, she's lovely. She goes off to steal gold stuff from upstairs, but we don't see her do it, so I don't know if
That's another action I applaud.
I don't know if she followed through on it or not.
No. Well, she didn't, pull a bunch of gold stuff out of her bra at the end of the night when she staggered home.
Well, there probably wasn't room for it with all the shrimp.
Yeah.
Anyway, Chidi takes her home because she's drunk and tucks her into bed, and she apologises for her behaviour and asks if anyone cares if she died. She announces she was an only child and her parents were divorced when she was young. The next day, she wakes up and she finds out that all hell is breaking loose in the good place. There's giant ladybirds flying around, there's shrimp flying through the air. Ariana Grande is playing at a very loud volume.
Giant vitamin bottles rolling down the street, crushing things. Yeah.
Yep. Everyone other than Elanor is dressed in this.
It's sort of horizontal zigzags of black on yellow, and I thought it looked like emergency tape.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That you cordon off areas with. Yeah.
Yes. And I don't know if you noticed, but all of these things were related in some way to her misbehaviour the day before. No one else noticed the misbehaviour, of course, apart from Chidi, but
yeah,
it's causing the good place to go on the fritz.
And disintegrate.
Oh. As Chidi puts it, this place is put together like a Swiss watch, and you're like a wrench in the gears. He announces there's nothing you can do. But Elanor says, you could teach me how to be good, Chidi. You could help me earn my place here.
Yeah. He's the man to do it.
Yeah. And so we end the episode with Chidi having to decide whether he's going to turn Elanor in or try and teach her to become a good person. And he announces again that he's got a stomachache. Of course, Michael's knocking on the door as they kind of ending this conversation. So the decision's got to be made now.
And they're ending on a cliffhanger.
Ending on it. This is the perfect example.
Yep. And
sitcom with a cliffhanger.
That's right. And so she is not dressed the way everyone else is dressed. So it's going to be a dead giveaway.
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, it suggests to me that, we might find out later on that although something's clearly wrong here, she might end up being his soulmate because it's his whole job as a professor of ethics and morality. He's now got a very serious ethical dilemma on his hands. So it's like someone's handed him this incredible ethical dilemma, and he's got to deal with it instantly. He might be the person to deal with it. But I suppose we don't want to talk about what's further down the line and whether my theory is right or wrong.
I won't comment on that theory.
Yeah, fair enough.
Other than to say, if she's not supposed to be there, how can she be his soulmate?
It's a very ordered place, the good place. And ordered suggests manufactured, and maybe the universe is making a minor adjustment by throwing her into the mix. Who knows? That probably doesn't play out that way.
I think the implication is, in this episode, that there is another Elanor Shellstrop. And there's been a mix-up, and the real Elanor...
Who should be in the good place.
Who should be there,
still stuck down on
Chidi's soulmate, and not Elanor.
All that sort
not
of
our
stuff.
Elanor.
Yeah.
All right, well, I've got my list of reasons why I think it's worthy of entry. Shall we meander our way through those? And you can chime in whenever you see fit.
Okay.
And I might call on you to comment. The first thing I wanted to mention is the situation. This is something I think we've talked about a little bit in regards to how the situation in a sitcom have a big influence on it, and how in some situations you do get a lot of value out of a tough situation. Like I think the one we probably talked about before is, say, Blackadder Goes Forth, where he's in the trenches of World War One, and pretty much every episode he's facing the likelihood of
certain death,
going over the top for king and country.
Yeah, or worse.
Well, what could be worse than that?
Having to spend time with Baldrick and George.
Being beaten to death by General Melkett.
For shooting and eating Speckley Jim.
Yeah, exactly.
Shut my speckle jam.
But I think this ramps the situation up even further than Blackadder being in the trenches of World War One, because basically for eternity, Elanor has to convince a close-knit community of 321 other people and some kind of angelic architect and omniscient AI that she's a good person. How's she going to do that?
I don't know. Yes, no, I agree with what you're saying. It's just that her horrible situation is rather more comfort than poor old Blackadder.
Or temporarily.
With trench foot and all that. Oh, yeah.
If she slips up, she's going to go to the bad place.
I hadn't thought of that. And then it really is going to be an eternity of nastiness and torture.
Yeah, of screaming. But, and I'm on to point number 2, if anyone can do it, she can. I love the way she keeps her guard up through the initial interview with Michael where she's basically been told that she's just died. She doesn't get overwhelmed by it or anything like that.
No.
And also, when she's finding out she's in the good place, and obviously in the back of her mind, she's processing all this and saying, well, what am I doing here? And this Elanor that they're describing is not me, but she keeps the cards close to her chest. She doesn't let any of this out.
Yeah.
She's very astute. She's got instincts of steel. And she keeps her mouth shut, but then she reads Chidi's character very well and makes him vow this, or swear to keep the secret. And and then unloads what it is. And I think she knows instinctively that he's going to find it difficult to go back on his word.
Well, quite.
Yes, quite. And number 3, she will need help. So the ending of this episode puts Chidi in this moral dilemma of having to teach, or potentially having to teach Elanor moral philosophy, which lays the groundwork for a lot of the rest of the series, which is basically him teaching her, and where that goes from there. So this is a quote from an article I read. One of the show's charms is the way it draws on real philosophers and philosophical dilemmas. By the way, this might not sound like a enthralling idea for a
Laugh
sitcom,
a minute gag
but
fest.
I think it's fantastic. By trying to teach Elanor ethics, Chidi's situation echoes a problem developed in some of Plato's dialogues, namely, whether a person who rejects morality can be reasoned into being moral. In answer to this problem, Chidi cites Aristotle's idea that virtue could be learned like a musical instrument, namely through active practice. So the idea is that even though you're not a good person, you act as though you are, and the rest will follow later. So that's just one of the kind of concepts that they play around with and have fun with.
Yeah.
And this is where I thought the comparison to My Name is Earl came in, because both main characters are being compelled to try and become better people through some kind of a life-changing experience, or in Eleanor's case, life-ending experience.
Very well put.
Just before we leave the subject of moral philosophy, there's a quote from a later episode where Eleanor's getting a bit frustrated, and she says, well, who died and left Aristotle in charge of ethics? To which Chidi turns around and says, well, Plato did.
Which, if you're in the know, you'd be cacking yourself.
Oh, those type of jokes just totally float my boat. Anyway.
It's exactly how, I'm sure in the first season of Big Bang Theory, they whipped out a few things like that only scientists would understand, and they'd be high-fiving themselves and dancing around the room and going, yes, in jokes.
Yep.
But yeah, brilliant.
Did you notice that there's no laugh track?
Well, I didn't notice it in the same way that when you showed me Corner Gas, I really noticed it.
Wonder why that is.
Because, well, just off the top of my head, I'd say that Corner Gas is a more standard sitcom where here's a funny line and there's this massive gap where a laugh should be, and there isn't one before they deliver the next line, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
And plus, this is a whole mind-bending thing where it's a very interesting premise, whereas in Corner Gas, there's nothing new happening. It's just... And that's the thing of the show, is that basically nothing changes in Dog River, and here's what they do every day. And so you're not being blown away by these concepts. And so if they're just delivering a gag and then there's no laugh. Anyway, I don't know. I haven't thought this through.
No,
but I really noticed it with Corner Gas, but I didn't notice it at all with Good Place. But it has the feel more of a longer format, 45-minute, 50-minute show.
Yeah.
It has that feel of it.
Okay.
And I think it's because there isn't a reset happening.
Yeah.
And because it is a show that progresses on with an overall arc, that it does have the feel of that sort of show. And so I'll wait until you're finished, and then I'll bring that up in reference to other shows.
Cool. So I think we've talked before about when you've got no laugh track, you've got to pay a bit more attention to what's going on. Did you find that with the jokes in this, where you're picking up on those, or...
Not really.
Without being clued into it?
Well, I think being the first episode, they're throwing a lot at you, and there's some backstory, and there's things to work out, so there's a hell of a lot to hold your interest.
Yeah.
And so I was just dealing with all of that. I mean, I didn't actually pick up on any actual jokes. The only jokes I thought were, the bit where she's trying to curse, and she can't do it.
Yeah.
And that's a gag.
I have to admit, I did find it a bit disorientating the first time I watched it.
Well, Forks sounds very unnatural. Anyhow,
I just meant in general.
Yeah, in general.
Yeah.
Okay. The whole thing disorienting. But, yeah, so there's so much going on that I wasn't worried about which bits were funny and which bits weren't funny.
Yeah. I was going to quickly mention layers because you've got jokes, high concept jokes about moral philosophy, down to jokes about stuffing your bra with shrimp.
Yeah.
Which you can relate to that, can't you?
Well, not the stuffing the bra with shrimp, but the range of gags.
We've all been there.
Anyway.
I've got some gags. All the gags you missed.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
either A, I missed them, or B, whether they can be classified as gags or not is up for debate.
Let's see. So, when Elanor asks Michael to relate the circumstances of her death, he explains that she died in by the way, I've Australianised this.
In the car park.
She died in a supermarket car park. She dropped a bottle of Lonely Gal margarita mix for one, bent down to pick it up, and a long row of shopping trolleys rolled out of control and ploughed right into her. And she says, "That's how I died? No, there's more. You managed to grab hold of the trolleys, but were swept out into the street. You were struck and killed by a mobile billboard truck advertising an erectile dysfunction pill.
Called Engorgulate.
Engorgulate. And the first EMT to arrive on the scene was an ex-boyfriend. And actually, that's not the end of the explanation, but Eleanor's heard enough at that point and cuts him off. And
The
again,
way he
reminds me of
delivered it.
Earl, because Earl
Oh, yeah.
finds himself in the street, run over. When Elanor is explaining to Chidi how she was a salesperson and relates what that involved, she defends herself at the end by saying, "Well, I was the top salesperson 5 years running."
He goes,
He's
"Do you
like,
understand?"
You do understand that's not a good thing, right?
Yeah.
She's like, at the party, Elanor is trying to convince Chidi that these people are not so much better than her. And then you get this montage of must be them being introduced to other residents of the neighbourhood at the party. One of them, he spent half his life in North Korea fighting for women's rights and the other half in Saudi Arabia fighting for gay rights.
Yeah. How is he still alive? I have no idea.
Well, he's
But there
not.
you go.
He's dead.
Oh, that's right.
Come on, get with the program, Jeff. This lady, she removed over 1,000 landmines around an orphanage. And then the last one was a guy who donated both kidneys to a complete stranger. And every time one of them is explaining what they did in their life, Eleanor's got another glass of champagne and she's
throwing it
in
back.
disgust. She's throwing it back. The last one is she's towards the end of the episode there at her house and having this discussion, and she's railing against this system that's been set up where only the top 1 in 1 million
Nicey, picey
person
people.
gets into the good place, and she's really going off about it. She says, "I was a medium person. I wasn't bad. I wasn't good. I should be going to a medium place." That's where everyone, the bulk of people should be.
She should go to Cincinnati, she claims.
Yeah,
I've never been
somewhere
there,
medium like Cincinnati.
but I just remember that show WKRP in Cincinnati, which I never watched a single episode of.
What was that? A
A
sitcom?
sitcom about a radio station.
Ah,
It was probably news radio before news radio was news radio.
might have been.
Yeah, except not as funny, obviously.
We'll have to look that one up. We'll add it to our list of ones to look at.
Fair enough.
Well, I've reached the end, Jeff. What have you
Have you?
got?
She'd reached
What do
the
you
end as
feel?
well. Boom tish. Okay, well, just observations. I haven't got lists of gags or anything. My first observation was Ted Danson's actually playing a character. Now, I know he actually plays characters, because Becca's a very different character to Sam.
Yeah.
But he's playing a character I've never seen him play before. And it was a very different thing. And I thought, Ted Danson's actually acting. And as I just said a moment ago, he actually acts in his other ones, but it just seems like he's outside of his range here. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, Ted Danson's doing a tremendously good job there. So that was a first thought.
Yep.
But as you were speaking before with this, I've drawn parallels to other shows, right? Which is, there's the obvious My Name is Earl one, but this reminds me a lot of a show called Eureka, which was sort of a sci-fi comedy. Actually, it's pretty strict sci-fi because it's all about science. Mm-hmm. So I've got my box sets of Eureka over there. I've told you about it before, but essentially what happens in Eureka is this US federal marshals transporting a person in custody, who we later find out is his daughter. And he's going through, the wilderness of some really nice-looking state with beautiful forests and stuff. And he gets in a car accident and has to wait for his car to be repaired in this small town. And then, a crime has happened in this small town. And he can't help himself, so he has to investigate. And it basically turns out that this town is a small town that all these super intelligent people live in, and they work at this facility that is run by the government at ultra mega top secret level. And they're all Einstein level geniuses, and their kids are all Einstein level geniuses and all this. And so basically... Hello, dear listener. We just had a bit of a recording snafu where the recorder we used ran out of batteries after I'd been talking for about 10 minutes on all sorts of various topics. So as I make my brilliant realizations and blow Steve's mind with all my revelations there, you're going to have to act surprised again, Steve, and go, wow, that was
I'll do my best.
Amazing. So I was just talking about Eureka and how Sheriff Carter finds himself in this amazing new world, and there's a lot of parallels with this show here. And then, in a nutshell, I just went on to say how it's a really nice combination of Eureka and My Name is Earl. And then I was thinking, things were occurring to me as I watched it that had parallels with Hitchhiker's Guide, which, you know, you had Ted Danson who's standing up there and introducing everyone to the thing, and on the screen you've got all the figures flying about and sort of little animations, much better than Hitchhiker's Guide. But I thought, and because he's a architect who's designing bits of this world, he's a bit Slarty Bartfastian.
Yes, very.
So that would make Elanor, Arthur, being dumped into this world and having to deal with all this stuff that's going on. But the thing I noticed when you were doing your synopsis a few moments ago, is how on the screen the first thing Elanor sees is everything is fine as a bit of a calmative statement, which I thought, oh, yeah, of course, don't panic, is the first thing in the Hitchhiker's Guide. And so, and the shows are all about answering the big questions of life and all that sort of stuff, which Hitchhiker's Guide did with Douglas Adams and all that. And, I thought you were impressed by my reasoning there.
I was blown away.
Yeah, but we've lost all the spontaneity now, but what can you do? And so having those elements of Hitchhiker's Guide and Eureka and My Name is Earl, all of which are brilliant shows that I love, I think The Good Place could end up being in my top 10 sitcoms, which, as you said, is a big call.
Yep, sure is.
And just watching this episode, I might not have noticed a lot of gags, but I was really sucked in and interested by the premise of the whole thing. And it's exactly the sort of show I'd want to watch. And I was keen to watch more and not really have to step aside and record this show. I just kind of binged watched several episodes of this.
Okay.
So I reckon I could knock it all off in a 3-day weekend.
Yep.
And I probably will. So I approve of The Good Place. And I can see it's going to be right up my alley. And I'm not sure if we recorded it, but I had this whole rant about the top-down nature of The Good Place and elites
compared
making Elanor change, which, Earl's very much a bottom-up sort of thing, and he has the harder job because he's got to try and be a better person while he's still surrounded by squalor and criminals and people trying to foil him at every turn.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have so that might be more appealing depending on, it's My Name is Earl for, elitist people. How's that?
Yeah.
But either way, it's right up my street.
So I'll ask you the question officially. Are we putting it into the Hall of Fame, Jeff?
I think we should.
That's a bit of a relief because I was uncertain about it.
Be uncertain no more, but it's nice to have not only an American show, but a modern
I think this show. One, it's very inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a female lead. We've got multicultural. We've got people from all over the world arriving in The Good Place.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that aspect to it.
Right. And it's not a standard sitcom where it's an office full of people sniping at each other or a family sniping at each other.
Yeah.
Which is pretty rare. And, they've just brought back Roseanne, which will be a family sniping at each other.
Yeah.
So, I'll just watch season 3 of The Good Place instead when it comes out. So, top stuff.
Good, thanks for that, Jeff.
Thank you.
And we'll see you in a couple of weeks, listeners.
Take care. Join us next time on Sitcom Showdown when we'll be putting another 5-star episode under the microscope. And in the meantime, you can contact us with feedback on Facebook, Twitter @Sitcom Showdown, or by email sitcomshowdown@gmail.com.